watching the Louie File. I'm so glad you joined me. I am going to be talking about who we wrestle today. Who is it that we're really wrestling as a Christian, as a believer, as a Bible-believing Christian? We need to get this straight. We need to come to a conclusion as to who the real enemy is. If we don't know who the real enemy is and how he operates and what his troubles are and what his weakness and motivations are, then we're just simply not going to know how to fight, how to wrestle. Some of these verses I'm going to use today are going to be very familiar to some of you. Some may not be. Some of it is insights that I believe God has given me, shown me over the years, and I do not want to rush through this, so this may turn into a series of a few videos, but as of right now, I'm going to title this Who We Wrestle. So we'll probably have a part 1, maybe 2, maybe 3, I'm not sure, but if you need to find the other parts, I will try to make that clear on the heading of each one. So without further ado, if you will, turn with me to this huge verse that's found in Ephesians. Now, like I said, a lot of you may be familiar with this, but we're going to start here in Ephesians 6, and I'm just going to read one verse, verse 12. So it says, Ephesians 6:12, "For our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the powers, against the world forces of this darkness, against the spiritual forces of wickedness in the heavenly places." Wow, that is a jam-packed verse. So let's just start right here at the beginning. It says, our struggle, or we wrestle not, is what I think the old King James says. So we have a struggle and we have a wrestling match, but it's not against flesh and blood. So it's not against another human being. Our real battle, struggle, wrestling match is not really against a flesh and blood being. And then he goes on to tell us, but it's rather against, and then he gives us this list: rulers, powers, world forces of darkness, spiritual forces of wickedness in heavenly places. So these are spiritual beings, rulers and powers and wickedness, and it says in heavenly places. So let's think about this for a minute. Generally, when we think of heavenly places, and I'm just speaking to myself, you think of no sin, no struggle. It's heaven, it's peace, eternal peace and joy forevermore. And now the heaven that we as Christians are looking forward to, that would exactly be it. But there is a heavenly realm, a heavenly places, if you will, that is pointing toward a spiritual place in general. And now that may not be just the simple good and joyful place of heaven hereafter, but it may be the unseen realm, the unseen world where the forces of good and evil are doing battle. And I think that's what he's talking about here. So there are wickedness, there are spiritual forces of wickedness in the heavenlies, in the spiritual, in the unseen places. And that's what we're really wrestling against, not the seen, the flesh and blood people. All right, so now let me take you to 1 Timothy. 1 Timothy chapter 2. This was something I believe God revealed to me years ago as I was studying the role of overseers and deacons. The authority structure in the church Paul gives Timothy, as a young pastor, a list, check marks, I guess, check boxes about who should be in these type of positions. And I found some things in here that I think is a little deeper than the average person might see. I don't know. I'm not trying to be more spiritual than you, but if you will, 1 Timothy 2, he's telling about overseers and how they should be above reproach, the husband of one wife, prudent, respectable, hospitable, able to teach, not addicted to too much wine, gentle, free from the love of money. You must manage your own household well. All right, so, but what I want you to get to here is 1 Timothy 2, verse 6 and 7. Look at this. It says, "And not a new convert." So the overseer, you should not put someone in a position of authority too soon when they're newborn Christians. So not a new convert, so that he will not become conceited and fall into the condemnation incurred by the devil. And he must have a good reputation with those outside the church, so that he will not fall into reproach and the snare of the devil. Wow, so this devil, this enemy of God and enemy of God's people, pops up right here in the middle of the qualifications for an overseer. Isn't that interesting? So let's look at this for a second. He says he should not be a new convert because he might become conceited. And in my Bible, I have a New American Standard. It says, and fall into the condemnation incurred by the devil. Now, we could look at this a couple of different ways. It may be saying to us that a new convert becoming conceited and full of themselves might fall under condemnation of the devil, meaning from the devil. But the way I'm seeing this is I think what God is showing us here is not only is the human being going to fall into pride, get into pride, and then fall into condemnation, but it's the same condemnation as the devil. The same condemnation that he falls under, fell under, lives under. And that kind of changes things a little bit. And then it goes on, it says you must have a good reputation with those outside the church so you won't fall into the snare of the devil. So I think there's a twofold thing being shared here, is that the new convert put in a position of authority too soon might get arrogant and fall into the same condemnation as the devil did. And if he doesn't have a good reputation with those outside, he might fall into the snare of the devil, be enslaved or trapped by the devil. So I remember years ago I saw this verse about the same condemnation as the devil, and I thought, what is that saying to us? Oh my. Could it be true that maybe Lucifer, who most people believe was Satan prior to his fall, Lucifer, maybe, could it be, I mean, we know that it was pride according to the scriptures, and I'm going to look at that probably in the next video. If I hope that you stick with me as I come to a complete thought on these things. Next video we're gonna pick up right here probably, and we're gonna move into Ezekiel 28, and then we're gonna go back into 2 Timothy. So I hope that you would come back and see and join me for the rest of this, but for now, just think about this for a minute. Hell was made for the devil and his angels. It wasn't made for humans. And our everlasting life, our hereafter, we will be joined to either Satan or Christ. And that's the only reason we'll be enjoying or in pain and agony, because we're joined to Christ in the heavenly, joyful, blissful, content state hereafter, or we're going to be joined to the devil under condemnation and in a snare forever and ever and ever. So that's something to think about. We wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against spiritual powers and forces of wickedness in heavenly places. Come back and join me next time on the Louie File. It should be marked under Who We Wrestle, Part 2. Thanks for watching. I'll see you then.